Hello, this is Rocky Marciano. When I was heavyweight champion of the world, they called me the Brockton Blockbuster. You find out why.
Welcome to the Rocky Marciano archives. This is the second part of our upload on Carmine Vingo's battle with both Rocky Marciano and life. In this concluding chapter, Carmine, told in his own words and narrated here by myself, explains his fights, both against Rocky, or at least as explained to him, and to recover from that fateful night. His is an inspiring tale, for it is a story that could happen to all who climb into the ring. For far too many it has, and tragically to some, the ending was truly the end. We know you'll get something out of this. I try hard to remember the walk down that aisle and the fight itself, but my memory stops at those steps. The punches that knocked me out, or possibly my head hitting the canvas, wiped out all those details. The steps, and then suddenly I'm looking up at a white ceiling and a face, it becomes my mother's face, is over me, and I try to reach up and touch her, but I can't move my left arm. I'm on a bed, and I fight to get up, but my left leg is dead, too. I'm scared, and I hear my own voice moaning, "What's the matter with me? What's the matter with me?" Then another face appears. A man's. The man says, "Do you know my name, Carmine?" From the shiny piece of metal attached by a band to his head, I know he's a doctor, and although I've seen his face a dozen times before, I can't think of his name. And it's then that I begin to cry. Actually, this scene in the hospital took place on the 11th day after the fight. Those other days are dead for me. I can only describe them by what I've heard. Some people have told me it was one of the ruggedest fights they'd ever seen. It was toe-to-toe all the way. Rocky knocked me down for a 9 count in the first and second rounds, but each time I came up strong. They say I staggered him in the second, and even Rocky says I almost had him in the third. Jackie tells me that up to the 6th it could have gone either way. Then I weakened. I didn't throw more than 2 strong punches that round, and I was bleeding from that old cut over the eye and from my nose. Jackie says he would have thrown in the towel, only it's not allowed by the New York State Boxing Commission rules. I went down toward the middle of the 6th. A short left hook did it. The ref counted to 3, then took out my mouthpiece because he could tell I was through, but the timekeeper finished the count. They say I got up then, but collapsed. Dr. Vincent Nardiello, physician for the Boxing Commission, rushed into the ring. He jabbed a needle into my chest, but I still didn't come out of it. They carried me out of the ring on a stretcher. Dr. Nardiello worked over me in the dressing room, and then, out the door I'd hoped to walk through in victory, 10 men carried me on a stretcher, coats and blankets piled high on me to a hospital nearby. I had a blood clot, and there was a concussion and a small tear on the brain. They didn't think I had much chance to live. In fact, that first night a priest gave me the last rites. For the next 10 days, I was in and out of a coma. I'm supposed to have talked to a few people, and Jackie says my first words to him were, "Get me a rematch." They say sometimes I'd scream, "Where am I?" and that I kept refighting the bout with my one good arm. I hear I scared several night nurses into quitting. Then it was the 11th day, and my mother's face was looking into mine, and I was fully conscious at last. But I was to be on the critical list for a few more days. Learning that my entire left side was paralyzed almost crushed me, but piled on that was what I found out later. This was when I was lying on my back in bed, alone in the room. Or so I thought. Then I heard a noise on my left. I turned my head and Kitty was sitting on a chair. She got up and stood over me. She looked worried. I asked her how long she'd been there, and in a strange voice she answered, "A half hour." I told her not to kid me, but she said she wasn't joking. In fact, she went on, I'd even turned my eyes toward her in that time. Scared, I pleaded with her not to fool me. Instead of answering, she put a finger up to my face. When it was in front of me, I could see it. When she moved her finger to either side, I couldn't. A doctor confirmed the worst. I was blind in the left eye, and part of the vision was gone out of my right. Today, the only way I can see anything is if I'm looking straight at it. On top of this, I was worried about my mind. That doctor, the one I was sure I knew but still couldn't recognize, kept coming in every day, and the first thing he'd ask me was his name. I could recognize everyone but him. If only I could remember his name, I'd know my mind was okay. About the 4th day after I regained consciousness, the name came to me. Waiting for the doctor to come in, I kept repeating his name so I wouldn't forget. The minute he walked through the door, I shouted, "Dr. Nardiello!" He smiled. It was a big victory for me. I had a lot of visitors while I was in the hospital. Some of the men who came to see me are pretty big in the New York boxing picture. I was feeling gloomy because even if I got back some of my health, I didn't know how I could earn a living. Fighting was all I knew, and that was over. These men made me more promises than I can remember. They were going to hold a big benefit show for me, and surely I'd get enough out of it to start a small business. I'll tell you what I got. Marciano, by generously donating a percentage of each purse from his next few fights, gave $2,000 to the hospital and $500 to me. Rocky is one of my best friends today. Also, I got $500 from the garden, which was payment on an insurance policy they take out on fighters, so that makes $1,000 altogether that I received in cash, in a matter of a month or so after the bout. And, oh yes, just recently I ran into Jackie Levine. Jackie probably had taken this as hard as anyone. He pressed $200 on me. I didn't want to take it. It made me feel so small and helpless, but I needed the money too badly to turn it down. The money went quickly. Kitty wasn't making too much, and there were always bills. When I'd left the hospital, a doctor there had told me to come back once a week for treatments. I never did, though, because I had heard that the treatments would cost something, and I couldn't afford to pay, and I wouldn't go to a charity clinic because I was ashamed to. I did have to see a dentist, though, because I was having trouble with my gums. Within a week, I lost 6 teeth. Once, long after the fight, I stopped at Bobby Gleason's gym. Curiosity forced me. I sat on a folding chair among other visitors. A few fellows were working out. Only one guy was there from the old crowd, the only one I knew or who knew me. He was working on the speed bag. He smiled when he saw me and nodded for me to come over. I stood next to him while he kept the bag dancing. "How you been, Carmine?" he asked. It wasn't Bingo anymore. No one ever called me Bingo. "Not too bad." I had sort of an ache watching him work the bag. "You do okay out of the benefit?" I frowned. "What benefit?" He hooked the bag and caught it with both hands. "You kidding me?" He told me that some of the boys at Gleason's had planned a benefit for me, but that they'd been asked not to by some of the fellows downtown, because it might interfere with the big show they were going to put on for me. "I thought for sure they'd put it on," he said. "I've been outstown for a long time, see?" I wasn't sure if he was just apologizing or if what he said was true, but it didn't make much difference anymore. "Maybe it just slipped their minds," he said. He had the bag going again. Yeah, slipped their minds. The way I slipped out of the minds of a lot of people. Like that time when Kitty, trying to snap me out of my gloom, persuaded me to take her to a fight. She hated fights, but thought maybe seeing one would do me good. We were sitting at ringside. Before the main event, the announcer called several fighters to come up into the ring. I'd been introduced here a couple times myself, in the old days. I found myself sitting forward on my chair. I wanted to be called up so badly. Rocky Marciano was in there now, waving. Soon all the fellows were leaving as the fight was about to go on. Everything inside me went limp. I realized there was a nervous sweat on my palms. "They've really forgotten all about me," I said to Kitty. "What?" She hadn't heard. "Nothing. I couldn't wait to get out of there." September of 1951, I heard where Georgie Flores was in a hospital after a fight with Roger Donahue. I'd never met Flores, but what I learned made me feel like a brother to him. There was so much we had in common. He was only 20, and this had been his first big one in the garden for his first $1,500 purse. Everything the same, even our injuries. And where I had wanted to use my purse to get married, Flores had dreamed about using his to buy a home. I wanted to see Flores, to talk to him, to try to cheer him up. That same night, I sent him a telegram. "Keep punching. My prayers are with you." I planned to visit him in the hospital, but the day I wanted to, he died. And so, instead, I went to his funeral. I stood for a long while beside Flores' coffin. In back, his pretty wife was crying her heart out, and Roger Donahue was sitting, his face pale and tight. I'd known Roger from before, and later I said a few words to him. He just nodded. Then I walked over to Mrs. Flores. I can't explain what had got into me. It wasn't like me doing things like this, talking to strangers, telling them what was in my heart, but I had to talk to Mrs. Flores. I had to tell her how sorry I was. I don't remember everything I said to her, but it came from deep inside, and my heart was pounding all the time. A few days afterward, I was to hear that she said she wanted the whole world to know that the life of a single boy is worth more than all the dollars prize fighters earn for those who run them. After the funeral, I walked by myself for blocks. I couldn't get that kid out of my mind. Then it came to me that here I was walking, arms swinging by my sides. That thought alone did something to me. I was supposed to have been dead, but I was walking. Sure, the old leg and arm weren't 100%, and maybe it was harder for me to do things than it used to be, but being able to breathe was something. I was a fighter, and I wasn't licked yet. And just like I decisioned Mr. Death, that's how I'd whip what was holding me back now. Just wait and see. I was lucky I was even alive, wasn't I? Georgie Flores, Sonny Boy West, Laverne Roach, all the other boys, all of them dead, they and their dreams. I was one of the lucky ones, wasn't I? For Carmine, the true hero of this story, and he is a true hero, although his recollection ends, the journey would continue on for another 66 incredible years, leaving a legacy that deserves to be remembered. Thank you, Carmine Vingo. Rest easy. Thank you for listening. To hear the first part, please visit the link in description. Until the next time, we'll see you down the road.
If you like this content, then hit the subscribe button. To really support this channel, consider joining for just over $1 a month and unlock ad-free members-only content. Every member will play a key part in revealing the real Rocky.
I just enjoyed combat. I just enjoyed the sport that I had learned so well, and I had practiced so much that when the bell rang, I did a job. I could concentrate on the opponent.
It was a great career for me. I'm proud and very happy to talk about it. Sometimes I wonder why I was such an aggressive man in the ring.